Okay, so this graph right here will determine how successful you're going to be. So everyone has some degree of talent and agency. Talent meaning our natural skill or ability to do something, whether that be creative or athletic or artistic or whatever it may be, and agency meaning, in very simple terms, our power and will to fulfill our potential. If we're someone with little talent and low agency, we essentially become a cog in the wheel, someone who does just fine playing a minor but necessary role in a larger business, like we'll just turn up to work, do our thing and then go home. If we're someone with lots of talent and low agency, we become a frustrated genius. So this is someone with like exceptional natural abilities in science or art or business or music or like any other field, but we lack the motivation, discipline and direction to fully sort of realise that potential. So this leads to frustration both from ourselves and from those around us because we have like a large pool of untapped potential. On the other hand, if we're someone with like a very low amount of talent but high levels of agency, we're typically someone who's a bit of a go-getter. Like we may not have a huge amount of talent at any one particular thing, but our perseverance, our determination and our work ethic allows us to overcome obstacles and sort of make the most of what we have. And it's this relentless drive that allows us to achieve the successes we have in life. But the most successful individuals are both very highly talented and also extremely high agency. And these are the game changers. So these are the guys that will not just participate in their field, they'll innovate and lead within that field, setting new standards and inspiring others. Like these are the guys that will make a significant impact, they will achieve great success, and very often they will also leave a lasting legacy. So while talent can give us a head start in life, it's actually our agency, our drive, our determination, our willingness to act that ultimately determines how far we can go. But what are the traits shared by people with high agency, and how can we learn to be more high agency ourselves? Well, I think it comes down to 5 things. A useful place to start is by asking the golden question, which is if you were stuck in a third world prison cell and you had to call one person to help get you out, who would that person be? That person is the highest agency person you know. The idea is that high agency people don't have that many limiting beliefs and they have very high levels of self-efficacy too. Like, I don't know how to do it or I can't do it isn't really in their vocabulary, and nothing is too hard or too complex, and they always believe that they can find a way to do the things that they want to do, even if that means saving their friend from a prison cell on the other side of the world. It's really easy for us to get caught up in like a bunch of different abstract definitions about high agency, but really, agency is just realizing that we can just do things, you know? If we want to host an event, that's as simple as sending out an invite. If we want to make friends, that's as easy as sending a DM or saying hello to someone. If we want to start a blog, that's as simple as just typing. And what's even more crazy than that is realizing that our expectations or beliefs about what we can do could be even more powerful than our genes. There's a study that I came across recently actually that wanted to test the participants' VO2 max on a stationary bike, which essentially measures how much oxygen our body can use during intense exercise. And in the study, half the participants had a genetic mutation, which meant that their lungs or their body could absorb oxygen better than a typical person, and the other half of the participants had no genetic mutation. The researchers then mixed everyone up and randomly told half the participants that they had the mutation and therefore should perform well in the test, and the other half of the participants that they did not have the mutation and therefore would not perform so well. But upon looking at the results, they found that the lungs of the people without the genetic mutation, who were told that they should perform well in the test, actually blew off CO2 far more effectively, had lower heart rates and lower perceived rates of exertion compared to those people with the genetic mutation but were told did not have that particular mutation. In other words, because of what they were told, different groups were able to reverse the effectiveness of their genetic markers. And all of this plays into this concept of agency, because high agency people don't just act as if they have control over their circumstances, they genuinely believe it, and that belief shapes their reality. The bottom line is that someone who's high agency takes full control over their lives. They don't wait for permission or ideal circumstances or external validation, they create their own opportunities and solutions. This concept closely aligns with Stephen Covey's idea of the circle of influence and the circle of control, which he talks about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he explains that we all have like a wide range of concerns in life, whether that's the economy or the weather or people's opinions or, you know, whatever it may be, like global events, things like that. And all of these fit within the circle of concern. But within this broad circle of concern, there's a smaller circle that encompasses all the things that we could actually do something about, and that is the circle of influence. High agency people focus their energy on their circle of influence. Instead of worrying about all those things outside of their control, they focus on the areas in which they can actually make a difference. Like, they take actions on those things within their powers, whether it's their behavior or their decisions or the ways in which they interact with the world. By focusing within their circle of influence, high agency people often see this circle expand over time. By building credibility, solving problems, and achieving results, they are able to have more of an impact, more of an influence, and sort of influence a broader range of concerns over time. Whereas low agency people, in contrast, by focusing too far outside of what they can actually control, often feel very frustrated and powerless because they're expending a lot of energy on things that they have zero impact on. Taking full ownership of your life is about realizing where your power lies and using it effectively. It's about shifting your focus from what's outside of your control to what's within it, and then taking deliberate, proactive steps to achieve the outcomes you desire. But high agency people aren't just really defined by their resourcefulness or their ownership mentality, but also their ability to think independently, which is what I call orthogonal thinking. This means that they approach problems and challenges from a unique perspective, often considering perspectives that are overlooked. Their thinking isn't confined by conventional wisdom or social norms. Instead, they evaluate situations based on their own logic and experiences. In contrast, low agency people often operate in a way in which they are very heavily influenced by external forces or the opinions of others, and they are very quick to adopt the mindset of social groups or their tribe instead of thinking independently about the situations in front of them. In fact, there are three things that indicate low agency thinking. So firstly, low agency thinking involves passively downloading opinions and beliefs without questioning them. Someone who's low agency will be told a new idea and they will just accept that thing without rigorously testing it against evidence or against logic or against a consistent set of principles. Instead, their tribe or their group essentially has root access to their brain, dictating what they think and believe. Secondly, they're subject to the Steelman malfunction. So the idea is that whenever you get a low agency person to try and consider the opposing viewpoint, they often struggle to do so. And when you get them to try and express the strongest argument against their particular thought or belief, they don't know how to do that, or they don't understand the argument, or they're just completely unwilling to engage with the debate at all. In a similar way, if you ask them to point out a flaw or a weakness about the beliefs held by their group or the certain authority figure that they look up to, they're often unable to do so. Their thinking is often unchallenged and uncritical, leading to a very shallow understanding of the topic in front of them. And finally, social proof beats logic for low agency people. They're far more likely to agree to an idea if it comes from someone they admire, regardless of whether or not that is rooted in facts or evidence or anything along those lines. In other words, their opinions are often rooted in social proof rather than the logical assessment of the facts. It's for these reasons that high agency people typically have more niche interests too, because they're more likely to pursue something regardless of what the people around them think. Low agency people, on the other hand, are a bit like crabs in a bucket, in the sense that they will just pull each other down, whether consciously or unconsciously, whenever someone tries to break free from the status quo or do something that is outside the norm. And from what I can gather, this behaviour stems from some combination of fear, insecurity, and a desire for conformity, such that whenever someone tries to break free from the collective mindset and pursue an unconventional path, it often triggers a feeling of discomfort or envy in others who are afraid to do the same. This tendency to conform and to put others into the fold is linked to this broader misconception about authority and control within our lives. Many people operate under this illusion that there is some kind of authority figure or system that's in charge of determining the direction and limits of our lives. But in reality, this belief is largely just a construct of the mind. Adults don't actually exist. Deep down, everyone is just a child that is aged, with sensory inputs each day, trying to figure out what reality is. If you could see behind the curtains of everyone, you'd humanize them. They're not gods. They eat, they sleep, they visit the bathroom just like you. They're just giant children trying to figure things out. Finally, high agency people are what I call treadmill people rather than couch people. So treadmill people are those that invigorate and energize those around them. Spending time with them feels like a burst of motivation and inspiration. They're the ones who, through their passion, drive, and enthusiasm, make you feel like you can take on the world. Their presence is dynamic, engaging, and forward-moving, much like running on a treadmill. You're actively moving, striving, and growing. Couch people, on the other hand, are the complete opposite. Spending too much time with them can make you feel emotionally and physically exhausted, a bit like when you spend way too much time on your couch. Steve Jobs is actually a prime example of a treadmill person, so much so that the people he used to work with used to describe his ability to create this reality distortion field around him through his actions and his words. One early example of this was when Steve Jobs was working at Atari, and pushed Steve Wozniak to create a game called Breakout. Now, Woz basically said to Steve Jobs that this is going to take months and months and months, but Steve Jobs just stared at him and said, "You've got 4 days to create it." And Steve Wozniak knew that was impossible, but 4 days later, he had created the game. So this example shows that high agency people don't just influence people, they can almost reshape the very fabric of what's considered achievable. Their energy and belief can prompt others to surpass their limits, challenge their assumptions, and achieve results they might never have thought possible.